get started. Thank you for being here. Today, this webinar session is titled Innovative Design, Unleashing Creativity with Canva. And like I mentioned before we break, it's only really kind of got a loose connection to Canva. I will be showing some things in Canva, but mostly we're talking about design thinking, and you could use any tools that you or your students are familiar with to accomplish the things that we're going to look at today. So to start with, here is the standard that we're dealing with this month broken down. So the overall standard says students use a variety of technologies within a design process to identify and solve problems by creating new, useful, or imaginative solutions. And then you can see the different substandards that are broken out. So as I looked at that, this just all sounds like design thinking to me. It's all about design thinking. And when we talk about design thinking, there's lots of definitions for design thinking. There's a few of them here. I like this one here. It says design thinking sounds like it might be complicated, but at its core, it's simply a way to solve problems. The main aspect of design thinking that sets it apart from other problem-solving methodologies is that it focuses on the user or the person having the problem. The designer solves the problem by empathizing with the user, trying to get into their shoes. So we talk a lot about different types of like project-based learning or problem-solving methodologies where you're trying to create like authentic problems that your students are helping to solve. Design thinking is one of those methodologies, but one thing that sets it apart is that it really focuses on that end user, that person who has the problem, and making sure you can truly understand their point of view. And so we're going to kind of go through some of these steps of the design thinking process. There's lots of different models out there that have fairly similar steps. Sometimes they call them different things. Sometimes there's 6 or 7, or sometimes there's 5. Just depends on who you're asking, but they all accomplish essentially the same thing. So you can see a few of those with their little graphics showing you what the different steps are. Well, we're going to go through this process kind of step by step and talk a little bit about potential ways that you could organize this or do this in your classroom. And kind of the idea of this presentation is if you wanted to take and then share this with others, like you could take this and share it with teachers and take whatever you want. But kind of the audience would be teachers. I know we're talking to coaches, but it's the student standards. So we want to make sure we're talking about how to do this with our students. So step 1 of the process is to empathize through observation. So it's the first step, which really it's just gaining an understanding of the audience, of who you're trying to solve the problem for. So as you're doing this, I found a couple of resources. One, I want to show this. This comes from Stanford's Design School, and it's what they call their empathy planner. So there's lots of ways to like introduce a problem, but the key is you want to help your students feel that empathy. So this empathy planner talks about ways that you can design a challenge that you can start with an evocative and meaningful empathy experience. So it talks about some of the different ways you can do that, and then it has like these guiding questions to help you decide which way you would help to bring on that empathy experience. So I thought that was kind of an interesting tool that is listed there. But then this thing I'm showing here is just a Canva whiteboard. So this is a template that you could click. I can send you the slides actually right now, but it just if you use this, all it is just a whiteboard that has different places where the students could do this either in their groups or individually, or they could practice using Canva. The advantage to this is then it allows them for the next step to be able to just organize their observations and questions and ideas into like categories so they can move the things around. One thing I did want to show, let's do this. So if you having your students use a whiteboard either in a group or you're doing as a whole class. The way that you can get everyone on the design is you have to make sure you change this link to anyone with the link can edit. And then you copy that link. And I'm going to put that link into our chat. And I want you to join this whiteboard just for a moment because I want to show you a couple of things. So I'm going to put that in the chat. And Ross, I know you're driving, so don't worry about joining. So a couple of things now. So what you'll see is when you have multiple people in a whiteboard, you can see their cursor. That's kind of a preset thing in Canva whiteboards and Canva in general. Right now, where these Post-its are preset, they don't have a name attached to them. But if I add a new one by pressing S or using the Elements tab, you'll see that it has a name. It has my name. So if you add one, if you press S on your keyboard to add a sticky note, you'll see that it has your name. So that's one way you can kind of keep track of who's adding the ideas, is it kind of presets their name. The other thing I want to show you is that after you had time to work collaboratively, you could use the timer. You could set a timer for everyone. Like you'll notice that when I set a 5-minute timer, you'll have a smaller 5-minute timer in your bottom of your whiteboard. So it'll look like that. So you can do that while you're working. But then if you want to then have a chance for people to share and you want to see what they're seeing, if I were to click on like Krista and I click follow right here, then I'm following Krista now. So if Krista, if you zoom in or out on my screen, it will do the same thing. I'll be looking at exactly what Krista is looking at. So it's a nice way, especially if you're not all in the same place, to be able to follow what your collaborator is doing. And then if I want to stop following her, I just click again and stop following. So those are a couple of little features with Canva that can be really nice when you're working collaboratively. Like often in these types of design thinking projects, you want to have students working collaboratively because that's when real ideas can get out. But this first part could be done individually or as groups where they're working on this type of note-taking way to organize their thoughts. And then the last thing I'll guess, just a little tip, if you get off on your whiteboard and you can't find where you work because it's this infinite space, if you click the zoom and press fit, it's always going to zoom right back into where your content is. And I'm going to go back now to the slides. So that's that first step. That first step is all about trying to make sure you understand your audience so that you can then move on to the next step, which is the define step or define the challenge. And in this step, you take those insights that you gained, you put them all together, and then it's a practice in trying to identify some of the patterns or things that stick out from that insight that you've gained, that empathy that you've gained. And from that, then you'll define the challenge. Make sure you establish kind of the point of view, frame a clear question or clear problem, make sure you understand who it is you're trying to help, what their needs are, and probably most importantly, what impact will solving this challenge or solving this answer have for those people. So that's that second step, is just making sure you have that clear picture of what it is you're going to be trying to solve. And then that brings us to the third step, which is the ideate phase, which is where you're just going to try to ideate or come up with as many ideas as possible. There are several tips that people have for this, where you can do it almost like the opposite, where it's like you come up with the most crazy, obscure ideas as you can to really kind of get those creative juices flowing and not limiting the ideas that come, because you want to get as many ideas out there as you can. Nothing should be left off at this point. You're not trying to weed through what things are impossible. You want to make sure you're just getting as many ideas as you can, generating a large pool of ideas. And then once you have this large pool of ideas, that's when you can start to weed out ones that maybe aren't going to work, or ones that really stand out, to find the best solution. And so again, whiteboards are a great tool in Canva to be able to do this, because then you can go to your whiteboard now, even if you're using the same one, we could create a new section, or we could just use these ones, and you can move your like when you're that second step, I guess, where I skipped, you can move these to put them into categories. But now in the ideate phase, you'd have everyone create their ideas, and there's new templates here. Like uh, let's actually just add to it. So if I click templates up here, oh, it's actually right here, and I design thinking ideation right here. If I click that, it will add it to my whiteboard, and I can move it to wherever I want. But now I have a whole nother section of the whiteboard that people can add to this now. And this looks very similar to the one they already had, but now it's about their ideas. Um, so that ideation, and then they can vote with like the little icons on ones that they like, or you can, cross out things with an X, whatever you want to do. But again, the whole idea is getting as many ideas out there, because that's when the creativity really is getting out there. Sometimes we might think an idea is like crazy, but then as you start discussing it, maybe it actually would work, or maybe it can be adapted so that it would be possible as a way of solving the problem that you have identified. So then we'll move to our next step, step 4, which is a prototype. And I think this step sometimes is hard for teachers even to like visualize what a prototype might be when they're not like in an engineering class. They're not like actually necessarily building some kind of physical product. Sometimes you can, even in other classes. But the prototype, rather than thinking of it just as like an actual physical thing, there's lots of things that could be considered a prototype, whether it's a storyboard, because you're going to be creating a video, or just a wall of post-it notes. It could be a physical item. It could be a digital item. Or an interactive activity. If you're the challenge you're trying to solve is something that would be solved by some kind of activity or protocol that you have people go through, then you try to make that as tangible as possible for your audience to be able to get quality feedback. So if you are creating like a video, there's lots of templates in Canva for storyboards. You can just search storyboard, and there's a whole bunch where you could have students or show students how they could storyboard to give that prototype, that quick, dirty, not polished yet product, but at least would give people an idea of what it is that they're trying to come up with to solve the problem. But another thing is, if like what they're creating is like a product or even like an app, and they want to see what it would look like, Canva has something called mockups, where you can choose from a lot of different things, like some of these seen on the screen right now, and you can put your design into that product, whether it's a poster or like cosmetic, or it's something on a phone, and it gives you an idea of what that would look like. A t-shirt, there's a whole bunch of them. So there's 2 ways to access this. I'll just show you one really quick. From the Canva homepage, if I click on apps, you'll see that mockups is right here under the recommended things. If I click mockups, you'll see there are a whole bunch. Right now it's selected on technology, so you can click on any of these. Or there's others like trending down here, a whole bunch. I can click on print, so you can see what it would look like. So let's say that we wanted to create a smartphone case. I'm not sure what problem that would be solving, but you can see here that you can choose from any of these to give you an idea of what it would look like. So let's just choose this one with the woman holding that smartphone case, and then it says select an image or design. So I'm going to go ahead and click select, and we'll see what we have here that we can quickly choose. We'll just use this penguin, select that. And then you can see it's not quite oriented the right way that I would really want for this particular one, but it still gives you an idea of what it would look like on that that product. So mockups are kind of a fun way to kind of better visualize a design when it's actually created into something physical. So we'll adjust that a little bit so that you can see it. But again, prototyping, don't think about it. Don't be so locked into thinking of it as just like engineering, like you have to create some actual product, a robot, whatever it is. It can be something very, very quick, like a storyboard that just gives your audience a better idea of what it is that you're going to be creating to solve the problem so that they can give you feedback. And that moves to our last step of the design thinking process, which is the testing phase. And then to your testing, and then you're likely going to cycle back based off that feedback to improve the product that you're designing before you go to like creating the final product. So it says here that like testing is an important phase. It helps you refine the prototype based on audience feedback. Observing the audience interaction and encouraging feedback are key to identifying what works and what doesn't work. And the design thinking process is iterative and adaptable based on unique requirements of each project. So even though this process kind of looks linear sometimes, it's more of a process, especially once you get to this test phase, because likely you're not going to just go directly from prototype to testing to final product. You're probably going to go back to maybe even ideating, coming up with more ideas, but at least back to your prototype and changing the prototype to fit the needs that have been identified through the audience feedback. And if you're doing something that is digital, that you can get digital feedback again in Canva, if you have created something in Canva, one of the nice features of Canva or many of our digital tools is that you can get feedback. So let's just open a new design. Let's do this. Where you could invite people to your design by using the share link. And again, you can change what the access is, or you can invite certain individual people. So if I wanted to like invite Ross, I can choose to allow him to edit, to comment, or to view. So if you're looking for feedback and you want him to be able to actually give feedback on the design, you can just invite him as a commenter. And then once I send that link to Ross, he would be able to open it up, and he wouldn't be able to edit the design, but he would have this add comment option that appears in the margin, where he could then come and provide feedback on the design itself. And if there was specific things, like let's just add this really quick. Maybe he wanted to click on a certain thing and add a comment, it links it to what you have selected. So here you say something like, let's change this font. And you could comment, and then it's tied to that particular font. So if I click on this, you can see what's selected. So students that are, again, I know that our live audience both work at virtual schools. If students aren't in the same place, they are virtual. This is a great way to allow collaboration without having to be in the same place, and allow that feedback without having to be in the same place. So that is that fifth step. And then again, it goes back, you iterate after that. But if this is something that you like the idea, because I hear people say all the time, like, this sounds great, but how does it work? How do I actually apply it? And one of the challenges that we have with this is that it is so unique to each individual content area or each individual challenge that you come up with, that it's hard to give like really concrete examples of what this might look like. But I'm going to try to give you a few examples to give you kind of a picture of what this could look like. The first two examples come from, again, Stanford's D School. And these aren't particularly like content linked. These are more about just understanding design thinking. So these are two activities. One, this foil challenge is more for an elementary audience. And then the other one is more for, it's actually, I think they say it's for a middle school audience, but probably could work for high school as well. But either of these, they're linked. And I forgot to share with you the link to the slides. Let me do that really quick while I'm thinking about it. This is the slides now. Let's go back to presenting. Okay, so either of these are linked, so you could access those activities, but they're just introductions to design thinking. In this one, the foil challenge, the students will interview a partner about like I think it's about their favorite food, and then they're going to design a utensil for eating that food out of foil. So they have to like interview their partner and really get an idea of what they need as far as a eating tool for that food. And then they design it. And then this one is redesigning their school lunch experience. So they interview a partner again to gain that empathy for their school lunch experience, and then they redesign the school lunch experience, and it walks them through how to do that. So both are just quick introductions, can be done in just like basically like a class period, to give your students an introduction to design thinking. But then a few other examples are listed here, to give you kind of that idea of what types of things would lend themselves to a design thinking challenge. So things like designing a better playground or creating a classroom library. For middle school activities, we have here like solving a local community issue, which could link to a lot of different social studies standards at the middle school level. So it says here like students can engage with the local community problems such as traffic congestion or littering. They would have to do research, interview stakeholders, design innovative solutions, based off of what they learn. And this one, it could be done as like a whole class, or it could be done in groups. It doesn't, it could be either way. And especially like if you're interviewing, like if you reach out to a stakeholder or expert or something, you could have the whole class do that interview together, but then in groups they could come up with their own innovative design solutions. So there's ways to have whole group, but then also bring it down to having smaller group. Another one, designing a healthy school lunch, where it's more school based and not necessarily the wider community. Then in the high school ones, we have things like creating a sustainable community, which could relate to social studies or science standards, where students can design a sustainable community considering things like energy waste, food, transportation, and then they can research practices, create budgets, propose policies, or they could work on designing an app or a website, for like something for the school, or maybe even for a local business that you partner with, but it could be something even for like a school club. Um, so anyway, those are a couple of ideas. And then I would say one of our great new tools that we have today is generative AI. And so if you are wanting to come up with a design thinking project idea that fits your particular core, your teacher's particular core standards, I've found that just like asking AI for some suggestions, you can get some really good ideas. If you put in like, I want a design thinking project for my students this grade, we're addressing this standard right now, or this content, it can be pretty good at coming up with some ideas that you could then run with in your classroom. But anyway, that's a few ideas to get you thinking about that. And so that's kind of the brief overview of the process, and talking a little bit about how we can use digital tools like Canva to aid in this process. But I'd love to hear from any of our live participants. What is your experience with design thinking? Have you tried it out, and how has it gone? Or have you been afraid to try it out? I'd love to hear from either of you.
I was gonna say I guess it could fall under design thinking. I'll often have them do this. The topic is given, so when we study the Constitution, they'll be like, here are the issues that we're gonna look at, and then they kind of pick what issue they want to look at, and as a group, they brainstorm how they would address it, what changes we could make, what they decided to do back in the past, and like move and to a presentation. So I guess
Mhm.
similar to design thinking, but that's
Yeah,
how I used it.
awesome. And
I've done some things because obviously geography is a lot of this kind of thinking, and I'll give them a problem or something that a community is facing. So for example, the Aral Sea and drying up, and we
mhm.
looked at the history of the Aral Sea, what was going on with the Aral Sea, what the problems currently were with the Aral Sea, and what were some things that maybe Russia could do to fix it, and then dealing with the two actual countries that that surround it, because Russia started the problem but left them to fix it. Like, what were some of the things that could be done to change that? And um, it was interesting because all of them were like, just pump water into it. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? Where are you going to get the water? What kind of consequences would that cause to the community you're taking the water from? And anyway, it was really interesting for them to get them thinking about that and trying to decide what a good fix would be that would actually still be environmentally sound and appropriate for the solution.
And I love that one because you can kind of make the connection to the Great Salt Lake and the challenges that we're facing now with the Great Salt Lake, because there's some similarities, there's differences, but there's some similarities too. So it's interesting.
The toxic arsenic cloud. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, great. Yeah, I think that what I've found is that most of the time there are ways to adapt this to make it work for your classroom. Um, and the thing we love about this type of thing is that it is helping students develop the skills that transfer to other classes, but also the larger like workplace that they're gonna eventually move into. They're likely going to be working in group solving problems, and this teaches them a particular methodology that they could use parts of or follow to be successful in solving challenges in the world or in the workplace.
Can you show
So
me where that mock-up stuff was? I missed where you got that.
are you talking about like these?
In Canva, you clicked on a
Oh,
button for the
mock-ups. Yes.
mock-ups,
Yeah.
and I can't find
It was
that.
it was in apps.
So it's in apps. It can
So
also be, I'll show you the other way. So I showed you can access it from the homepage. So it's under apps and then mockups over here on the left-hand side. That's one way. But also if you already have a design with like your design on it, so like you'd have to have an image. But let's just choose a photo really quick. So let's say we like this photo right here. If I click on a photo and I click edit photo, you'll also see that mockups is listed right here as well. And so that's another way to access it. And then you can see all the different ones and then like all the different categories. And then if you want to look in more depth at any of them, so let's just click on popular. Maybe we wanted this on a hoodie. And so then you would click on that. And now it's just a matter of dragging your image over it. And this one isn't maybe the best mock-up one,
Okay.
but that's how it works.
That's cool. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, mock-ups is something that I don't think many people have seen or are aware of that can give you kind of that better picture of what it would look like. So like I've seen teachers do like where they have their students design a t-shirt, but it's just like to them it just looks like a square design or like a rectangular design. But if you use the mock-up, then they can see, oh, that's what it would look like on a t-shirt actually, a little bit better. So anyway, I guess last thing on here, this is an infographic that kind of puts all of what I talked about together into one graphic. It will be shared on our DTL Twitter this month when we're talking about innovative design. It's something that we've all been asked to create some kind of graphic or video showing how our particular tool can be used for innovative designer. So this is the one that you'll see for Canva, but you can access it from the slides here as well. And then I just want to thank you for being here today, or thank you for viewing this if you're viewing the recording. There's the information to follow our digital learning team. I will point out that the Instagram just got started this school year. It's has been, we've got a pretty good following, but it's teachers that continue to like learn about it. They continue to say, oh, I wish I would have known about this earlier, because they see a tip that they could have used previously. So if you're an Instagram user, I encourage you to follow the Jordan Digital Learning account. Our Twitter, or X, I guess it's called now, account continues to share daily resources related to the monthly theme. So this month it's all about innovative designer. Our webinar recordings all go to the Jordan Teaching and Learning website or YouTube channel. So you're welcome to view them there or in the DTL Canvas course. And then a reminder, we have the Jordan Journey podcast. We'll have a new episode released here in the next couple of days. That's on innovative designer. So look for that if you're a podcast listener. Follow or subscribe to the Jordan Journey. It's great. But I will go ahead and end there. Thank you for being here.